at Jeff Kerr, CBS. Jeff, welcome to the show, man. A tough loss for the Philadelphia Eagles yesterday. The fans are reeling. What's your initial thoughts on that game yesterday as you joined the show today?
Fans of unrealistic expectations of their football team. That's all I got for you.
Yeah, what I said, Jeff, respect the talent. Look, I think it's ridiculous that you lose A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Lane Johnson. We'll figure it out. We'll scheme it up. All off season, everybody's like, well, Kellen Moore will do this and Kellen Moore will do that. And Kellen Moore's a very good offensive coordinator. This is not a criticism of Kellen Moore. Respect the talent. They mean more. Nobody's motioning to scheme open Paris Campbell
or Jahan Dotson.
Oh yeah, or Jahan Dotson in the 2024 NFL. I mean, and the funny part is, after the bye, everything will go back to normal. This will be a good football team. Then it becomes the question of how good, and can Jalen Hurts elevate his game, and are you playing good football at the end of the season? You do have to start worrying about Washington a little bit more than I expected. So, maybe you don't have the gimme path to the playoffs as most expected, but this is going to be a good team when AJ and Devontae and Lane are back out there.
Yeah. John, I kind of wrote off this game the second Lane Johnson was down from questionable to out. A lot of people like to waste their ink on Fred Johnson last week, and rightfully so. I'm not criticizing anybody
for Fred. Come on, that's a good story.
He allowed 9 pressures yesterday. He was terrible. He was terrible last week. People just didn't want to admit it.
Still a good story.
It's a good story. I like Fred Johnson.
I'll give you credit because you said that last week when everybody was kind of giving him some flowers.
What flowers? You gave up 5 pressures in 18 pass blocking snaps. That's not good. That's replaceable. It is. And, Fred Johnson played well. No, he didn't. Tyler Steen played well. Fred Johnson did not play well.
Well, I was not in the Fred played well camp.
Oh, I know you weren't. I'm just saying I heard enough last week, and I'm just like, no, you're going to find out this week.
Jeff, you come on and you start with, and I it's fair. I see what you're saying, but you come on and say with, unfair expectations. And this would be my pushback, because I get you're probably leaning offensive side when you say that you're missing Lane, AJ, Devontae. I get it. Your offense isn't going to look
They have unrealistic expectations on their quarterback.
Jeff, what about the defense? You have 11.
Well, I know the defense stinks.
11 missed tackles yesterday, Jeff. They didn't even get off the bus, man. Like, if you're an Eagles fan and you spend money to go down to Tampa and you spend money on jerseys and things.
Well, that's your problem. That is your problem.
I know, but that's why they're upset. So
we got. I like overreaction, Jeff.
Yeah,
I love
it. This is my. You want to have an issue with this football team? These are my issues. Devin White retweeting Levante David, who he's friends with, sacking this quarter. I know, but. It's a bad. Oh, and Darius Slay said 150 pass breakups. 150. That's your captain of your football team, and you're boasting about yourself.
Well, to be fair, I ripped. When our captains came out, and I saw. Look, I like Jake Elliott. Don't get me wrong. You replaced Devontae Smith with Jake Elliott. I said, who's making these decisions? I like Jake Elliott and everything, but why'd you take Devontae Smith off the captaincy?
Honestly, Zander, the things that get me upset with them is we have our moments. That sort of stuff. Like, I don't care if those two get along or not. Don't openly admit it. Oh, by the way, Jalen, you're at fault too, because you don't know how to take care of the football if your life depended on it. So that's what I got.
Yeah, but Jet, one more pushback, and it's all in good fun. I'm not trying.
Yeah, this is all good fun.
11 missed tackle, and you're more mad about the Devin White tweet. I don't give a shit. Devin White likes his friend Levante David. By the way, great play by Levante David. Can you even blame Devin? Levante David was a force yesterday. 11 missed tackles on defense. They didn't get off the bus.
They never get off the bus. Last week was a mirage. What you saw yesterday is really what they are. Bryce Huff isn't good. He can't get to the pass. Brandon Graham is their best defensive pass rusher at age 36. That's the truth. Jalen Carter makes plays. He does. But you don't see that consistently. I don't need to go too deep on how bad Nakobe Dean was yesterday. I think we all could see that.
Nakobe was really bad.
Yeah, he was bad yesterday. And the thing is,
that's
John,
yeah. And I thought Nakobe had a very good summer. I'm very honest about it. He deserved to win the job. He won the job, but he is not playing well.
and the thing is, John, do you go back to Devin White? Will he even be on this team next week?
Yeah. No, I
It
don't.
seems
I
like
don't.
that ship is set. I'm not sure. I'm not in the room, John.
Yeah,
You're
but
in the room.
the thing is about Devin White can't play either. We've been
No,
trying to tell people like
yeah.
that. They don't believe it because he was the 5th pick, but whatever reason. Now, Doug Farrar put out a tweet yesterday. I knew it was bad. I didn't know it was this bad.
It was really bad.
The Eagles have had no cornerbacks in press covers on 88% of their snaps, by far the NFL's highest rate. And he said, I'm not sure how you expect to play modern defense that way. I kind of agree with him. Now, look, sometimes you have corners who are good at press, corners who aren't good at press. In theory, Quinyon Mitchell obviously played a lot of zone at Toledo, and that's the strength of his game, eyes on the quarterback and things like that. But he's got the athleticism to play press. You're supposed to develop these players as well.
I think Slay can still do it.
Slay's been one of the best press cover corners in the NFL for years and years and years. 88%, Vic Fangio?
That is insane.
You know what, John? It's almost like they got rid of the defensive coordinator last year, but they never really changed the defense.
Well, that's true. I mean, I haven't changed the defense at all since Nick Sirianni got here. And by the way, Jonathan Gannon looks better every single day doing anything with this garbage scheme. It's ironic. New Orleans in a weird way, because everybody said, look at how explosive New Orleans is. But they play 12 personnel. They play action. They want to run outside zone, old school, Gary Kubiak, Mike Shanahan football. And you can play those 5- and 6-man fronts. And that is better for the Eagles. When they got to play that 4-man front, rush the passer and cover, they're a disaster.
I could tell, like, in the first 2-3 plays of that game yesterday, like, they're in trouble because Baker's getting rid of the ball quick. Liam Cohn was scheming it up. He's got 2 receivers that can force you to miss tackles. It was a problem.
By the way, how many passes did Tampa drop?
At least 5.
I mean, it could have been worse. It could have been.
It should have been worse. I mean, it should have been 28-0.
I mean, can we just call it? Can we just call a spade and just realize the Bucs own the Eagles?
They do.
Well, that's part of it too.
I just get tired of hearing Bucs are a poverty franchise. Every time I turn on X, I'm like, no, they're not, because they own the Eagles. They
do, and they've knocked us out of the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years.
Yeah. They closed the stadium down. Like, are fans that young? They don't remember that now?
Yeah.
Well,
your thoughts on Jalen Hurts, because look, I like I was saying to John, and I consume most of what JAKIB Nation talks about in our chat and on our comments. We get thousands of them on our channel. So I'm not saying it's the whole fan base, but I think we have a pretty good portion of fans on our channel. I've never seen so much Jalen Hurts doubt right now coming from the fans. They've always been a large percentage of people who rode with the quarterback, who said, a lot of people are hating on him, all these things, and I get it, but where are you on Jalen Hurts? The turnovers are mounting like crazy. I mean, just doesn't look like the same guy right now to me. Your thoughts on Jalen Hurts, 2-2 going into the bye week?
He has his moments.
Yeah. I got to push back on that. I'm like, and I get killed when I criticize Jalen Hurts, but now I guess it's okay, which I think the people overreact to the point. Again, I will say it in plain as I can. Jahan Dotson, Paris Campbell, John Ross, Johnny Wilson. What the F are you expecting?
I was at the Penn State game Saturday night. I truly believe Penn State might have had 2 or 3 better receivers than 2 of the 3 receivers Eagles put out.
I watched Alabama, Georgia, and
I was going to say, they have a 17-year-old that's better.
The 17-year-old wide receiver on the field for Alabama.
Yeah, well, I didn't watch either of those games, so I'm not going to talk about that game specifically, but I've already talked about the college game specifically. The college game is responsible for Jahan Dotson. you can't. Jahan Dotson has tremendous, as you know, Jeff, as a Penn State guy, tremendous athleticism.
He does.
Tremendous. But you play that bullshit style of college football where every other play is tunnel, bubbles, some kind of screen, and you get a guy in space, and then he gets to the NFL level and says, oh, by the way, now you got to run real routes, and they're not prepared.
Yeah, he can't do it. He played 49 snaps yesterday, got 4 targets, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and there's certain, and that's why you look at when I look at receivers, but when personnel people look at receivers, they look at the guys who are more advanced running routes. Devontae Smith came here as a finished product. Justin Jefferson,
Chris Olave came to the
Chris Olave. Yeah. So that's the guys you should focus on, but everybody gets enthralled by the athleticism and say, oh, look at this guy took a 3-yard hitch and went 75 yards in college. Who gives a shit? He ain't doing that at the NFL level.
Because they're tackling him or he doesn't make the
play. Maybe not the Eagles. They miss 12
I think's been getting criticized the most from what I've seen on social media? Howie Roseman, based on the recent moves he's made. Bryce Huff and Jahan Dotson and what he's given up for these guys. And they're like, well, what are they doing?
I don't know.
Well, that's where I was going next. We're talking about Jahan Dotson like he's a poverty player. We just sent a 3rd-round pick for him a month ago.
He overpaid.
Yeah, I know that. But I'm saying that's why there's an expectation among the fans. This is why we traded for Dot. We sent a 3rd, which is a premium draft pick, a day 2 pick for Jahan Dotson. Yeah. The dude stinks.
My issue is
better than Jahan Dotson.
My issue is the last time I was on this show, John Ross was not on this football team. He was active on Sunday. That tells you all you need to know.
That's fair. I'm not going to push back on that. I'm speaking.
No, but I agree with you with the Jahan Dotson thing. As a fan, you should expect better.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Well, on Bryce Huff, and I brought this up on our pregame show. I think one of them might have been the post game. I don't know. Did you see Rich Cimini? Rich Cimini made some news. He covers the Jets for the ESPN.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I saw
and
that.
He was talking about the goofy. I'm not talking about the trade part of it. That's not happening. Reddick for up. That's just stupid. But he was talking about Huff as a player, and this is the indicator because I know a bunch of New York writers, both with the Giants and the Jets, and they all think Bryce Huff can play. And here's what Rich said. I don't think it's an indictment on Huff. I mean, we know he's a good player. And so I do believe the Jets made a mistake by letting him go. It's just that he's not a good fit in the Eagles system. And clearly, Vic Fangio, their defensive coordinator, has not embraced Huff. And so that's on the Eagles. They screwed up the signing. They've taken a good player and they're misusing him. I kind of agree with Rich. I hear this all the time that Bryce can't play. He already did play. He in a limited fashion. The one-trick pony, which I freely admit, but he had a hell of a trick. And
he was second in pass rusher percentage last year.
Yeah, and it wasn't just 1 year; it was 2 years. It was 2 years.
My issue with it was, I didn't have a problem with the signing. I had a problem with who you got rid of to bring the signing in. I thought he would have been better with the sign, but again, also what I know,
get rid of Hassan. That's another thing. They didn't trade. It wasn't. Obviously wasn't a trade, but it wasn't the idea of, we're going to replace Hassan Reddick with Bryce Huff. It was, we're not paying Hassan Reddick $25 million. So who can we get? Because he's not willing to pay. If he wanted to pay a play on the final year of his deal, he'd be here. They wouldn't have traded him.
Yeah, but he didn't want to do that. And now he's still not playing.
Yeah. So it wasn't about they replaced him. I see that so many times. They replaced Reddick with Huff. No, they said, all right, I'm not paying this guy $25 million, so we got to go in a different direction. Then what do we do?
Well, the evaluation was wrong, John. It's not.
Was it, or is this Vic Fangio not taking advantage of the skill set of his player?
So do you think Hassan Reddick would be struggling in this scheme as well?
Yes, not to the degree of Bryce Huff, but yes. Okay. Hassan Reddick can't cover, can't flat. People would lose their minds.
They lost it last year when he covered people.
When Jonathan Gannon would drop him in the coverage, and nobody dropped Hassan less into coverage than Jonathan Gannon during his career. And people would lose their mind when he did it. Vic would do it more. Vic would ask him to set the edge and make that more of a priority, which is not his strength. No, he's a better player. I'm not saying he's a better player than Bryce Huff. There's no question about that. It wouldn't be sunk to the depths they are now. But he would not be the same player that he was early in his career with the Eagles. And, he had a career year, obviously. It was going to be difficult to replicate that year no matter what in the Super Bowl season. But, yeah, Vic asks too much of these guys. Or he wants well-rounded players. And guess what? They're not well-rounded. So why don't you use what they do well and try to mask what they don't do as well? That's my argument.
That's where I blame the coaching. Now, I did not defend Nick yesterday, but people took it as such because, Twitter. I put PSA, just so you guys know, I forget how I worded it, but a coach isn't responsible for players' lack of execution. And it was in response to a dime Jalen Hurts through the Dallas Goedert, and he just flat out dropped it. That can't happen. Jalen Hurts rolling out, and Saquon Barkley's wide open on the first play, and you don't hit him.
Yeah, I don't think
I forgot that's Nick's fault. I forgot.
By the way, I saw the somebody put it up. I wish I give him credit, but somebody already put up he wasn't open. That was a TV
I didn't think he was either. Yeah, that
was a TV view, and it was he was open very late after the guy dropped him. Through the relevant portion of the play, it was actually very good coverage, and then at the very end, they just dropped him because they knew they could drop him.
Yeah.
And that's one of those. You watch it on TV. I thought the same thing. He's open. He wasn't open.
Yeah.
So and
maybe because Tom Brady's comments too, because I think Brady was thinking I'm a quarterback there. Maybe I would have done. But that's not the play I was really critical. It was Dallas Goedert dropped the pass. Like, look, your offense is struggling. You have to be near perfect on a day like yesterday. And Dallas Goedert, you just get, and he admitted as such, can't drop that pass. And he did. But, that's Nick Sirianni's fault. That's Kellen Moore's fault. No, it's not. That's Dallas Goedert's fault. He dropped the pass. Start blaming players. I'm not defending Nick Sirianni.
I said that I'm like, man. I mean, now in certain games now, people are starting to evidently turn on Jalen Hurts a little bit, but it's always the coach. Look, now you have Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. So what's the excuse now?
Exactly. Well, you know what, John? I used to say this with Joel Embiid. Okay, you got Brett Brown gone. Okay, now there's Doc Rivers. Okay, he's gone. Now there's Nick Nurse. Same issue.
Same issue here. I'm looking at Brian Johnson. And I know he's not the offensive coordinator. He's the passing game coordinator and the QB's coach in Washington. How's Jaden Daniels look right now?
Pretty good, but can Cliff sustain it? That's the issue with Cliff. But Cliff's a good coach. He's a good coach. I agree with you, Zander. That's where, again, this is where everything upsets me with people's evaluation. Oh, it's Nick's. I'm like, look, you can blame Nick Sirianni for a lot of stuff yesterday. Do not be blaming him because all of a sudden you want to spew the narrative that Nick's calling the plays.
Yeah, well, people want to blame everything on Nick, which is fine.
It's more than
keep
fine.
it on. But this was the whole thing. Oh, now you have coordinators, and you do. You have very good coordinators, but Kellen Moore can't overcome Paris Campbell, John Ross, throwing those people out there. He can't scheme them open. Motion isn't going to, blow up anyone's head, Levante David's head, and say, "What are they doing?"
And Levante David, future Hall of Famer Levante David.
it's just insanity. It's talent first. And by the way, when AJ and Devontae and Lane, you'll think they're great again.
Yep. And
And
they'll
they
be fine.
probably will be great again for vast swaths of time. But it's that you're on that precipice of all times. If you lose the good players, you're going to be in trouble. And nobody's going to scheme it up, and nobody's going to help you scheme it up. A coach is, if you got a 5-win roster, a good coach turns them into 6 or 7-win roster. That's it. That's it.
My favorite
Maybe a
was
bad
when
coach,
I
maybe a
heard-
coach turns
Yeah, but
5
isn't
into
that a
3.
double-edged sword, John? Because you just got done telling me that they're not using their players the right way.
Yes. You're that's what a good coach does. So that's what turns the 7-win roster into a 9-win roster.
Okay.
And
That's why
that's
Dan
what
Campbell's
turns
a good coach.
and that's what turns the 7-win roster into a 5-win roster if you're a bad coach. Yeah. And you're not doing what you're supposed to do.
I was trying to be as realistic as I could. I'm like, look, Paris Campbell was cut by this team. There's a reason they cut him.
Well, yeah, I mean,
John
Paris
Ross
Campbell.
was cut.
Paris Campbell's been in this league for what, 6 years?
6 years.
5,
This is 6 years.
6th year. What do people think is happening? Oh, the first 5 years they didn't utilize him correctly in Indianapolis or the Giants.
He was the second round pick. He was part of the whole. I can't believe this team passed on DK Metcalf for my guy. It was the Eagles took JJ Arcega-Whiteside. The Colts took Paris Campbell. The Cardinals took Andy Isabella, and DK Metcalf went after him. So he was part of that contingent.
Yeah. And the Eagles, that's one of the laughable ones for me is that, the Eagles, the scouts wanted Paris Campbell, but Jeffrey Lurie wanted JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
Yeah,
well, who cares?
So you picked a bad player anyway.
Yeah, who cares? Yeah, he's a little bit better than JJ. So, yeah, but ultimately, who cares?
And it's like we said about Johnny Wilson before I came on. I mean, he was a 6th round pick.
Yeah. Oh God, don't even get me started about Johnny Wilson. I try to shut people down. I'm like, I don't know what they're expecting. I mean, he's Joseph Nada with, sideshow Bob hair. That's what he is. He's not getting separation.
So Jeff, you're not concerned with Jalen Hurts just because of who he had around him yesterday?
I'm concerned about Jalen Hurts turning the football over, which I've been concerned about. He turns it over. He's a turnover machine. That's literally what he does. He turns the football over all the time.
I think he's second in the league right now in this year.
Three times in the red zone, he turns it over. And they're bad turnovers. That's what concerns me. I'm in the camp of John. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's elite. I don't think he's better than a Dak Prescott per se, but I think he can be a top 10 quarterback. And
I mean, look, these are the last 5 super chats from our viewers. Jalen Hurts is not a franchise QB without God and the country on the outside.
Near is Josh Allen. I hate to tell you that.
I don't know about that.
I disagree.
I disagree with that.
I'm not the day to do it.
Alexander, this is funny. Matt
whacked,
Stafford can keep the Rams competitive. Both his top receivers are missing. Hurts can't do the same. Jaden Daniels playing better.
Matthew Stafford is coached by Sean McVay.
Matthew Stafford is a great quarterback. Now he's older. I used to have this argument with Jody all the time. He was great in Detroit. Nobody realized it because they had such a shitty team.
I agree with John. I agree with both Johns.
I think it's the expectation though that Jalen was as good as some of those guys, and it's being shattered right now.
And they have the right to think that he outplayed Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but people have to understand it's one game, and he was the best player on the field in the biggest game of the year, and he was. But that doesn't mean. Again, I talked about with Jalen Carter. If you look at the upside of Jalen Carter against New Orleans, you'd say that's the best defensive tackle in football. He was on that day. He isn't on most days because the consistency is not there yet. Jalen Hurts had a spectacular game on the biggest stage and should be lauded for it. But consistently, he's not with the Patrick Mahomeses and the Josh Allens and whomever else you want to throw up there.
Lamar's on that list.
Lamar, 2-time MVP. He's not He's not in that group on a consistent basis. When he's playing his best, can he be there for a short period? Yes.
Yeah, but isn't this a completely different player than who he was in 20? Like they don't try and use him the same. I don't think he's capable of the same. Not a knock on him.
Was really good at his job too.
Well, he was, but I mean, now we have another revolving door at offensive coordinator, and it's like, are we going to make the same excuse at offensive coordinator every time? You know, this is not the same. And look, Jalen was fantastic in 22. I called for him to be the MVP of the league. That was my prediction before the season started, right here on JAKIB. So, you know, I thought the guy was great, but
if he didn't get hurt, he would have been.
He didn't play. He's not playing the same style of football right now. He's not being asked to, and I don't think he's capable of it because I think his body's taking some hits and he doesn't move the same.
That part I agree with. He doesn't move as well as he did earlier in his career. And that's just part of it. You gotta, I mean, that happens to everybody.
You guys think there's exterior factors here with him? Like, look, even in yesterday's press conference, and that's what's blowing up today on the national media show. We have our moments. That's what's blowing up today because Jalen can't help himself. It's funny. He always wants to get a certain message out. Do you think that's a message?
Give it to me again.
It was one of those long-winded questions, John, and it was about him and Nick Sirianni and you know, their communication or something like that. And he's like, we have.
Oh, it has. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I did hear that. I don't think they, you know, and it shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, they don't work as closely. I don't think Nick's as relevant as in Jalen's day-to-day life as he once was. I don't think that's a good thing because he's the head coach of the football team. But, you know, I think that's a Jeffrey Lurie problem. I've been very consistent with that. And, you know, I don't like the setup. I haven't liked the setup from day one when they set it up. And you have these little fiefdoms of Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore. And then you have Nick Sirianni, you know, putting his signature in a lot of ways. And I give Groats, our old buddy Bob Groats, credit for this. He's become Roger Goodell for the Eagles. What Roger Goodell is for the NFL.
I love that comp. I think it's so true.
He's a lightning rod. He's there to take all the heat. And he's taking all the heat. And he's there to deflect things.
I just think it's funny how proactive Jeffrey Lurie, who experienced this his first year as an owner. The Eagles controversially kept Rich Kotite after they started 4-0 in 93, and they won all their games, kind of like the Chiefs are doing right now by like 7 points or less. And Randall Cunningham got hurt, and shit just hit the fan, and they were 8-8, and they wanted to fire Randall. I mean, not Randall, Kotite. They didn't. Lurie took over the team. They did the same shit. They started 7-2. They looked like they were a Super Bowl team, lost the 49ers, and they just lose 7 straight to end the year. It just feels like 94 to me. It does. It's the same story. It's why did you keep this guy? I feel like they had to over-explain why they kept the guy. And they had every right to do it, but I feel like they're over-explaining why.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, I think he should have signed. I say it all the time. He should have shown the courage of his convictions. I would have kept Nick Sirianni for, you know, that for the reasons that are obvious. Made the Super Bowl, 3 consecutive playoff berths, best record in franchise history as a head coach. I mean, that's good enough for me to give him a mulligan. Coming off, acknowledging how bad the collapse was last year. That's the way I would have went. In Jeffrey's case, he tried to straddle the fence. Ultimately, that's the way he went, but he took some power away from Nick Sirianni, even if they won't admit it publicly.
Yeah, which doesn't help Nick Sirianni.
No.
Like, let Nick fix his issues. And you didn't, and his future doesn't look that great right now.
No. So my point is, show the courage of your convictions. If you want to fire him, but don't straddle the fence. You either need to give him the mulligan and let him be in charge, or go in a different direction.
Yeah. What if Nick wanted to hire Cliff Kingsbury and they said no?
It's possible. And Jeff, John, credit to you because you've been talking about this all summer. This setup is atrocious, and it starts from the top.
Yeah, it doesn't work. They think
It doesn't
this
work.
is my issue with a franchise like the Eagles. The Eagles love to toot their horn and think they're the Kansas City Chiefs, the Baltimore Ravens, the Buffalo Bills, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You had that. You had all of this. You had an Andy Reid type system. And you decided, no, we're better than that. And it worked. But don't compare yourselves to them now because that's not it.
Well, Jeffrey and Howie, I'm firmly convinced they think they're most responsible for the
Yeah, they are.
Lombardi Trophy.
Oh, they do.
And now they do anything to keep control, and I think that's part of the reason Nick Sirianni's back. They knew that they got control in Nick.
Do they know that the Baltimore Ravens don't have years like they do? Like where you just bottom out, and then I swear it's like a divide and conquer thing. It's like, all right, we fixed it. No, the Kansas City Chiefs, this doesn't happen to them. It barely. You know what the bad year for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was? 44-year-old Tom Brady at 8-9. Like, come on, it's
true.
I just love it. Like the whole rebuilding years for the Kansas City Chiefs are Super Bowl championships. It's
I mean, Andy Reid is Andy Reid, but they had to move on from Andy Reid.
Well, and I understand that.
There was a learning
but you
curve
can
for
still
Andy Reid to
you
become
can
Andy
still
Reid.
kind of hire Reid. Like this is my honest opinion. Howie Roseman is not on the level of Brandon Beane, Eric DeCosta, Jason Light, Brett Beach.
Fighting words.
He's not. He's not. Thinks he is. And look, these guys make mistakes too. Jason Light's
Everybody makes mistakes.
But I just thought it was
this collection of talent doesn't seem to be meshing well.
This roster is overrated. It's very top heavy. It's tremendous at the top, and that's what matters most as long as guys stay healthy. Yeah. But you're seeing the depth issues in live and living color. Yeah. And that's part of it. You're rolling the dice. You're keeping all these good players at the top of the roster. You're paying them a lot of money. And then it trickles down and you have some lesser players down the roster.
Yeah.
And by and large, that depth is overrated.
Yeah, and look, Roseman's a great GM. I'm not saying, but it's more than him. It's an organizational philosophy. We don't care about linebackers. Okay, well, teams you're losing to and teams that are going deep in the playoffs always seem to have good linebackers every single year. You're going out there with
how about keeping good players? Depending, when you get a good player. If I were a GM, this is just the way I'd go about it.
Like TJ Edwards, good player.
Yeah, if I had a good player at any position, I'm trying to keep them because you see, all right. For the most part, I had agreed with the Eagles' thought process on the running back position. It's devalued. You don't spend a lot of assets, and now they're being proven right that Saquon is a difference maker, and I'm being proven wrong.
And the Ravens were right too with Derrick Henry. They said, "Hey,
he's a beast."
200. Did he crack 200 yesterday?
No, he got 199. They took him out.
199. Yeah. So when you get a top level player, they can make a difference. But if it's your middle of the road, it's like, we'll just move on.
Yeah, and they were right about that. That was a good signing for him.
Yeah.
That's where I am, John, on Hassan Reddick. I get it. They didn't want to pay $25 million. I'd rather pay $8 million more for a dude I know that can get to the effing quarterback.
Yeah. Well, do you know it against Big Ben with
I know it more than I knew it about Bryce Huff. I mean,
that's true. That part's true. But I think you're thinking of the 2022.
No, I'm not. I'm not even expecting.
Even the 2023 Hassan Reddick wasn't nearly as good as the 2022 version. And I think that continues to trickle down with the way Vic is using. If he's using Hassan Reddick the same way he's using Bryce Huff, it's going to be much better. But it's not going to be what you want.
What bothers me with Hassan is, and this organization's, and I've agreed with them for a lot of this over the years, they will not pay most guys over 30. or turning 30. But now it's okay, and I get it. Fletcher Cox, great player. They kept him around. Hassan Reddick was a good player. They didn't keep him around, but they keep Darius Slay around. And Darius Slay's still a good player. But
The best player on the Eagles this year, and I say that because he shows up every week and you know he's there, is Brandon Graham, and he's 36. So,
I think he's the best leader on the Eagles too. I really do.
He's certainly the best player on defense. I know Jalen Carter's got all the talent, but if I wake up one morning and it's like, I hope I get the good Jalen Carter today, what is that? How do you build a team on that? That's why I'm like, Brandon Graham's the best guy. You know what you're getting every single week.
It's true. I mean, look, I think Jalen Carter is still a young player. I still think he's going to be really good.
I get it. He's got
But no, I agree.
He's going to grow, but
you know what? But you know where I got my where's it? The Field of the Fire last night. Watching Ravens Bills and watching Kyle Hamilton just make a play.
Oh, Hamilton, baby!
I'm like,
what a player! What a player!
Every time with them, it's always something. Let's pass
one
on
of the few I got right. I always got to pump that. I love
you trade. Oh, by the way, Eagles, you traded up. You traded up, and
but you know what? Again, Kyle Hamilton isn't Kyle Hamilton in this scheme. So
no, he's not. But he's still a good player.
Man, this scheme, guys, this scheme blows. We need to move.
But you're playing Kyle Hamilton cover 2. Come on.
I know, but if you're looking at me and you're telling me a player as good as Kyle Hamilton, if he's not going to be good in this scheme, what scheme do you have? You got to accentuate great.
John has been consistent in this since day one.
Take that scheme and chuck it in the garbage. I mean, that's a great player.
John's been calling this
100%.
John's been calling this. He's been talking to me about this for over a year now. This scheme has passed the game by, and he's right.
In the face of Kyle, look, I'm not saying Kyle would be better than what you have playing cover 2 because he's just good. He's just good at everything, but it's a waste. What I'm saying is in this scheme, it's a waste. I think people look at what he does in Baltimore and says, boy, he'll come over here and do that. Again, it's not a vacuum. If they play the same way they play defense here, Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore is not going to be Kyle Hamilton in Philadelphia. That's all I'm trying to say. He's not going to be able to do
my
the
issue
same
is, and I always joke about this with people on the Ravens, they just let you guys get good players all the time, don't they?
Oh, they do.
It doesn't matter. And
I got a text on draft night when the Eagles got Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith that essentially said the same thing. How they keep letting you guys get good players from an executive. Well, they might have not. People overrate. Nolan Smith is getting a little bit better, but nothing there.
I give him the Kobe Dean. I just play him and see what he's got at this point.
So would I.
What they got. Jeff, last question, man. We got to let you go because we were coming up on the end of it here with Chris Franklin coming up. But, it's Overreaction Monday. Am I overreacting to say that this team is not even close to a Super Bowl contender in the 2024 season?
What's your expectation of a Super Bowl contender before I answer that?
Well, I mean, look, I'm not a reporter, right? I'm an Eagles fan. I now do.
Well, that's what
I watched this team march to the Super Bowl in 22. I watched Howie now construct a team that was sold as this is now the best roster we've had. I think this roster could arguably, it doesn't look like it now, but coming into the year, many thought it could be better than 22. The expectation with that is we could be back to the NFC title game. We could be playing, in the Super Bowl. We could maybe get the balance.
By the way, Zander, I agree with you. I think they still could get back to the NFC title game, even with their deficiencies.
Okay,
because
that's where I want to hear.
There aren't many. Look, if you watch around the league, there are a lot of teams I'm not impressed with, but there are teams that are going to get better. And look, I think the 49ers are going to be fine. I know Detroit's good. The Vikings are going to be a problem. I still think Green Bay's good. They beat a good team at week 1. They did. And the schedule does get easier. I don't think Cleveland's good. I know the Giants stink. Carolina's coming up, right?
I'll tell you, got 2 tough games versus Washington coming up, Jeff.
Well, we'll see. Washington was 3-1 a couple years ago, too. Look,
I know, but that quarterback looks good.
I
to
was
me,
talking
man.
to a lot of Commanders people last night. They're like, "Hold your horses, dude. Do you ever see our defense?" I'm like, "You ever see the Eagles' defense?" So, yeah, they'll be interesting. And look, they struggled against Washington last year, but look, I still think they're a playoff team. I still think the Cowboys are a playoff team. I think everything's going to even out as time goes. Look, we're still only a quarter into this thing. Look, Xander, I'll just say this. I'd rather see guys like you overreact to an Eagles loss than the way people overreact to Phillies losses, because there is one NFL game. They only play 17 of them. So,
Yep.
I enjoyed this. This is it's when the Phillies are losing game 148 is when I get upset.
Jeff, great stuff, man. Thank you for joining today. Make sure you guys follow Jeff at Jeff Kerr CBS. He does great work for CBS Sports covering.
Yeah, and I
the
like
NFL.
angry overreaction Monday, Jeff Kerr.
It's October, John. We got October coming up, so
October baseball, Red October. Yeah,
last couple days of
yeah.
September here, yep.
All right, go Phillies.
Yeah, hopefully the
Jeff,
Phillies.
thank you, man.
Hopefully the Phillies could cure a lot of Philly sports fans over the Eagles bye week, so they can forget about them for a week.
That's a tall order. This is Philly, Jeff. We live in perpetual misery when it comes to sports. That's what my prediction would be. But thanks for joining today, brother. We'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, bud.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Jeff.
it.
Great stuff from Jeff, man. Love listening to Jeff. He's great on an overreaction Monday, Jeff. John, you're right. He brings the heat. So